Welcome to the Aaron Warner podcast on iCode Media. Excited to have my longtime friend Masoud Nafey with us, Dr. Masoud Nafey. And I was trying to think, Masoud, how long has it been since we've met and known each other?
12 years at minimum.
Wow, that's crazy. So I live vicariously through Masoud because he does all the cool stuff and has the cool stories from his journey in the optometric space and outside the optometric space. So why don't I'm going to pass it to you real quick, Masoud, and just give everybody listening who doesn't know you and hasn't had the pleasure yet a little bit about your journey and all the cool things you've done, like I said, within optometry, outside of optometry.
Yeah, well, appreciate it. It's okay. I've always tried to be like every other optometrist who's smarter than I am. And, like you, I started out as an optometrist, seeing patients, practicing, doing my thing. And then I realized there were a lot of problems that needed to be solved, and I wanted to be a part of that solution. And one of the things that I found was a lot of gaps in technology offerings and solutions we had and how we practice. And it wasn't optimal. So, I started my career building out clinics. Actually, I built the optical clinics and eye care clinics in like Facebook's headquarters, Google, Apple, and some of those folks. And then got a chance to manage multiple clinics that way. And then I moved on to industry when I worked at VSP and started building my first baby, Eyefinity, and got a chance to work with some incredibly talented people there. And I got my, got my arms around the technology side of it, and I caught a bug. And I said, wow, I really want to build technology for the rest of my career and really impact several practices all at once. And I always looked at it as an indirect way to be in patient care and help our colleagues do a better job and also help them do what they really signed up to do, which is care for people. So then I did some building of technology there, went over to AstraZeneca, did some things there. We built some technology there. And then I went and built my very first startup in AI and had some success with that. And then I do some consulting for the Sovereign Wealth Fund externally, and then I also have a chance to help and advise in our industry, which it's the industry I grew up in. It's the industry I care the most about, and I'm honored to be a part of it.
Oh, very cool. I feel the same for you. It's I love having the impact one-on-one with a patient in the exam room, but I also love having the opportunity to help others who are doing that. Sometimes I feel like my impact is bigger, right? Maybe my energies get used more appropriately sometimes in those spaces. So,
yeah.
Yep.
Beyond the exam room, that's what you do.
Exactly. So I've got a question. We didn't talk about this ahead of time, but because you were involved in an EHR, why is it so hard to make the perfect EHR? Right? Why is there's got to be more to it that somebody simple-minded like me doesn't fully understand. Because in theory, it's just I just want it to do X, Y, and Z. So give us a little bit of the background that what goes into the complexities of building out an EHR.
Well, the entire premise of building technology is building it. Let's say you're someone who built technology and you're building this EHR for the industry. The entire premise is you build it once on one beautiful workflow, and then everyone gets a chance to use it. That's not what happens. All of us practice slightly differently, and we have different specialties. We have different ways of seeing patients. Our patient workflow is different. There are a lot of unique little subtle differences. The subtle differences then lead to different ways of documenting an exam, which is why all of us loved paper charts. Paper charts allowed us all to be the artists that we are in the exam lane. And I actually believe the way we do an exam is our own art, and everyone does it in their own way. So it's hard to build one system that does it the same way for everybody. So what that leads to is a little bit of conflict in terms of some practices love their system because it works exactly like they intended it to. And then some people don't because that system doesn't fit into their workflow really well. The hardest part was, for me, is kind of the 80-20 rule, building a system that works for 80% of the people. So then you have a business that could stand on its own two legs, but B, have a solution that can be impactful for the industry. And that's just one piece of it. Then you, of course, get into, how do you do inventory? Oh, they do the practice management side different. Oh, then how do you do pricing? Oh, we do pricing different from others. And then how do we do point of sale and checkout? That's different. It's not just the exam lane. And then also then we talk about how we have omni-channel solutions. How do we take care of our patients outside the practice? And what does that process workflow look like pre-exam, post-exam, touching base with our patients? All those things differ practice to practice. So also, large companies are the ones that are building these EHR PM systems, and sometimes you would think with all these resources they could build things pretty quickly, but they also have the most amount of conflicts. So a lot of times they're not getting to their next version of their roadmap as fast as maybe smaller startup agile EHR systems.
That it makes more sense, especially right now. I'm reading a book by Bob Iger, and he talks about at Disney, right, some of the things that they had to do. And you would think when he's talking in billions that you'd have enough money to invest in something. And some of the conversations he shared about whether to develop a software or to buy a company that's developing the software and then try to change it, and the challenges they had. It was quite interesting, I guess, because in my mind, again, things should, it's simple. It just works. 1 + 1 = 2. But not knowing how this, all the technology and the software writing and the code writing, and how all the different pieces have to work together, go into effect.
Too. But also, Aaron, there's the whole piece of technology is ever changing. So also, there's a lot of infrastructural change that happens with these platforms that you don't necessarily feel as a customer. But those things are allowing the system to be more scalable, efficient, and ready for the future. But you don't feel that because the features don't necessarily change. So then there's all this stuff happening in the background to maintain a technology. But, a lot of people don't see that. And until you start building it, then you'll know kind of the pain of doing that. And look, just to get an EHR system government compliant can take 8 months of continuous development. But
Really?
to a customer, that feels like 8 months of you guys haven't done anything in this software.
Yeah, I want it now, right? So speaking of the just software and technologies, and looking back, so I graduated in 2008. We were on paper charts. I converted the practice over to exam writer office mate, and kudos to my dad who said, "Hey, you figure it out and you go, and I won't fight you." Although I know how much of a challenge that was for him. And then we went from Office Mate Exam Writer to Affinity Platform, even though it was the same company. It was like a conversion going from Android to Apple. Very, very different. And this has just been in my short career in optometry, what do you foresee the changes happening as we're going forward? So where are we going forward as an industry when it comes to technology?
Well, it's a loaded question, but
it is a loaded question.
Here are a couple things that I think that we can see. Obviously, with some of the new technology platforms out there, but also with AI becoming more prevalent in everything that we do, there are certain tools that can now be developed to make certain processes more efficient for us. So let's just take since we're on the topic of EHR and practice management systems, we'll do a real example there. There are actually AI tools today that can take fields from your current EHR system. It may not be used for this use case, but it's possible. And I think we're going to see that in the near future. Take fields from your current EHR system, so when you move over to another one, that data is not lost. It actually goes into the right fields for the next system. So, data migration today has always been subpar. Nobody's really happy with it. At the end of the day, you do lose data, but how come we haven't figured that out? And actually, we have figured it out now. The technology exists. Field-to-field data migration is going to be in our near future. That's just one example. But this is what with using the existing technologies that are out there. Thank goodness artificial intelligence is really open source, because when I was building my first AI platform, I think we raised a total of over $5 million to build something. And I'll tell you, that same system today can be built with 50 grand because of open source models and how intelligent they are. and how much faster we can get to a product than before. So there are a lot of tools out there that can help us literally real impact as we start to make impactful decisions for our business. And that's just in an eye care practice.
Oh, that's crazy. That would have been nice when we converted before.
Yeah. You never know.
Yeah, exactly. So you brought up AI, and it's a buzzword. Quite frankly, I'm kind of getting tired of hearing the word AI, and mostly because I'm old, and my experience with it so far is, Chat GPT and what kind of cool things can it make, generate a picture with me with 4 eyes or something silly. What do guys like me need to know from the basic standpoint of AI? What do I need to do to engage properly with it and be ready for the next change and what's coming?
Yeah, I mean, so let's talk about what AI is, right? So it's software. At the end of the day, it's software. It's a gimmicky word that's being used in gimmicky ways, but it's just software. I mean, when a machine or software can learn to learn, problem solve, and reason, that machine is now artificially intelligent. So in its truest definition, that's what we're looking at. A machine that can learn, problem solve, and reason. Now you go, okay, how does it learn, and what does it learn off of? It learns off data. So by definition, data is the fuel to make artificial intelligence do its thing. So now you know that, you go, okay, how can I make sure that there are tools that I can use in my practice or in my business that can help, that AI can help me with? And the first problem you have to look at is, what data do I have and what problem am I trying to solve? Do I have enough data to solve for that problem? And if so, AI can be a solution. It's not the solution for everything. And that data has to be good data. So if it's bad data, of course, the results are going to be, poor results in terms of what that machine can do for you. So that's just one basic understanding of how artificial intelligence works. Now, if you get that, you can go, oh, I could see how this can help me on the clinical side. Oh, I could see how this can help me on the patient engagement side. Oh, I can see how this can help me with marketing. Oh, I can see how this can help me with customer operations and customer service. And you start to see the tools that are being built out there. But when you understand how AI works, it's so much easier to understand how these tools work and how to make the right decisions for you.
That makes a lot more sense, especially the data part, right? It's because at the end of the day, I don't know if I'm going to say I'm responsible for collecting the data, but I think that as humans and as clinicians, we're responsible for getting good data, right? And quantifying the data that we get, whether it's an OCT data or visual field data, certainly coding appropriately with all the CPT codes and the innumerable amount we have more with ICD-10 and not with the bilateralities and whatnot. So inputting data properly. And then the other thing that you said that I thought was intriguing, I haven't heard before, is what problem do I have? Because AI can't tell me what I need to solve. I need to come up with the answer to the problem or the question that I'm looking for, right? And my guess is the more specific I can be with that question, the better the software can use the good data to help me answer that question.
Yeah, be as specific as you can for the input, so then the output could be exactly what you're looking for. And that's the term you would use in when you use an AI powered software, whatever it is. The input has to be good, so the output could be exactly what you want. And the more specific you can get with that input or that prompt, the more specific your results will be in terms of the answers you're seeking. So, you look at this from a clinical standpoint. What made us good doctors to begin with is that we understood how to collect data. And we understood how to interpret that data. And the better we are at that, the better we are as clinicians. There's software that can help us with that now. And so then what it does is, for us as clinicians, it takes away from us being data collectors and allows us to be empathetic doctors. Because if it does that part for us and puts it into these charts for us, and then all we have to do is interpret the results and bond with our patients and care for that human being that sits in front of me, now I'm doing exactly what I originally signed up to do, dedicating my life to be a physician.
Yep. Well, that's cool. I remember going on a tour at I think it was the Smithsonian when I had this thought and listening to the tour guide and saying, that's the cool job, right? I don't have to be the artist. I get to take people on this journey because I'm experienced the journey and it's cool from my standpoint, and they get to do this over and over again. And I remember thinking how cool that would be as a physician if I got to be the curator, right, the guide for somebody through their health, instead of having to say what's better 1 and 2 constantly, you know, or just doing tests, being able to say, hey, here's all the results from the tests that we've run. Here's where we're at. Here's what we need to do. What questions can I answer for you? And it feels like we're going along that journey now side by side, as opposed to facing each other almost confrontationally sometimes.
Yeah. And let's talk about something controversial, which is
Please.
refractions. Refractions.
Yes.
We take so much pride in our refractions, right? And there's a reason for it, and I understand it. I love when I get that thing right, right? So then patients are happy, you improve their quality of life immediately.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, we were collecting data.
Yep.
And I am confident we can teach a machine to refract and look for the right signals, clues, the way the patient said something, their uncertainty in their voice. All these things can be taught to a machine, and then it can be perfected. And what these machines do is they get better over time. They learn. I always tell people, when you think of artificial intelligence, think of a baby. It's only going to get smarter over time. And as that baby matures and grows, the only difference is it grows at an alarmingly fast rate.
Yeah.
That baby will start to be way better at that specific task. And where we are as an industry, with artificial intelligence, we're only at simple tasks. It can really only solve one problem at a time. So when you think about it, I think one of the future states of eye care are going to be where we're not going to need to be doing the refraction ourselves. Controversial.
Oh, I would pay to be at that point, right? Good, because it's funny, I get 4th year students, and some of them will show up still with their retinascope, and I go, what are you doing, right? You're welcome to use it if you want to, but you should walk in that room, not on Halloween. So I use that expression because as an optometrist, I saw my students and even some of my colleagues wouldn't look at the patient chart, wouldn't do their homework. They'd walk in the room and say, what are we doing here today? Right? It's like, what's behind door number 1? Right? You're going to scare me? You're going to give me a lollipop? Like, what's going on? And refractions crack me up, because if I've got a patient that's been here for 5 years and my techs have done an autorefractor before they came in and I've got entering acuities, I already know what the final prescription is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to see them, right? So at that point, saying what's better 1 and 2 is really just going through a game, and we can only refine it in the exam lane down to a quarter diopter, which nobody's follows the exact rules. They're somewhere in between there, and I just kind of do what's best fit. So yeah, I think if we can if we can have somebody help, or have a machine help them, find their perfect prescription. If I can have machines or instruments, because we pay a lot of money for them, so we call them instruments, right? Gather all the appropriate data. The question for me then becomes, how do I figure out what data is important and what's not?
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, we already know which clinical data is important. We already know that. We use that data today to make decisions, right? That's what we do. But, think about where optometry can go. If we stop focusing on refractions and spending a lot of our time in the exam lane on these things and collecting data, we open ourselves up to the opportunity of providing more medical eye care services.
Mm-hmm.
And when you open that door, you've got all this opportunity to provide really end-to-end care, holistic care to the patients that are in front of you. And we will need to do that, because ophthalmology doesn't have they don't have enough doctors to take care of all of them. And they need to be doing the surgery. So our industry is moving in that direction too. So I think with the advancement, we're talking about the future of eye care, with the advancement of technology, it will allow us to do and be more medical eye care providers, which will allow us to truly be the doctors we all intended to be, right? And practice full scope optometry. So I think that can only help us. And we just have to get past the whole pride part of, I take a lot of pride in my refraction. I take a lot of pride. If you look at the sustainable competitive advantage of being a doctor, people say they talk about technology replacing doctors. Technology can't replace a doctor if they can't replace what's sustainable about our competitive
Hmm.
advantage, which is the care, the empathy, the way to relate to the other human being that's sitting in that chair across from us, and to be able to describe it, whatever that's going on, describe it and actually understand our emotional intelligence. All of those things is what makes us
Yep.
unique. Technology won't replace all of that, not
No,
anytime soon.
no, not at all. And it's interesting you brought up pride and refractions. Merged with a different practice years ago, and after the doc we had merged with was with us for a little over a year, one of my techs pulled me aside and said, "Hey, I've got a concern." I said, "What's that?" And he said, "Well, I think he's writing his final spectacle prescriptions 100% based on the autorefractor." I said, "Oh, interesting." So I went and pulled his charts, and sure enough, it was pretty consistent with the autorefractor across the board. And right, the emotions started welling up in me, and I was getting upset, and how can this be? I like data over feelings, and so I said, well, let's just go look and see. I went and pulled the non RX adapt numbers from the lab. Let me prove that me taking the time to go through the 1-2 exercise is
Mm.
superior to the expensive piece of equipment that I make everybody run through. Um, his rates were the exact same as all the other doctors in the practice,
Wow.
and which told me a couple things. One, I picked a really good autorefractor to to buy.
You did.
But two, that I think that our emotions and our ego was slightly misplaced in what we were doing. And then I felt really silly because of all the care I provide, something that was as straightforward as the spectacle prescription that we've been doing for a long time and we're good at. And I'm not talking the crazy binocular issues, right? Those can get
Yeah,
very
or the
challenging, right?
program.
Just the straightforward, right? And I'm sure I'm going to get hate mail for this, but I had a lot of ego placed in the wrong spot,
Right.
right? Whereas the quality of healthcare that I was providing um, wasn't there, right?
Mm.
And or it was where my ego should have been, not in how good I could find the endpoint on the 1-2 game.
Yeah.
But I thought that was really interesting, just assessment that I had, and then I went back and looked at my numbers and the rest, and realized that it's pretty darn close to the auto refraction. And quite frankly, they all fell within tolerance for national boards and industry standards on tolerances. So,
Wow.
with few exceptions, right? And kids obviously are different because they
Yes.
over accommodate, and we don't. You got a cycloplegia and whatnot, but for adults, I thought it was pretty interesting. So I think if we could really refine that, to your point, right, and then if the instrumentation can learn, and the AI can learn, the technology can learn, just if somebody's a little bit taller, a little bit shorter, what their vocation is, how to just adjust slightly, then we can go focus on the more important things.
Well, absolutely. Now let's take it back to the original topic we brought up at the beginning of this conversation, which is, so how do you build technology that can
Mm-hmm.
work for every use case?
Yep.
You can't. You build
Nope.
technology, and technology is useful for the 80% of use cases. And if you any technologist, anytime they want to build something that works for 100% of use cases, they'll never get it done. So there will be those times where pediatric patients, no, you got to do it the old way, the old school way,
Yeah.
or those binocular vision patients you were talking about. So, but if we can be efficient on 80% of the patients that we see, so then we can do more of the things we love, that'd be great. It goes back to even the EHR discussion. How come
Yeah.
EHR? No, there's no perfect EHR. Well, it's because nobody even likes an EHR. So nobody even wants an EHR. We
Yeah.
do it because we have to.
Yep.
So even on that topic, you're like, oh, how come I don't love it? You would have never loved it if it was perfect for you. It's something. It's a kind of it's a mandate, right? It's a necessary
Yeah.
evil.
The Myopia Collective. CooperVision and the AOA have partnered in a groundbreaking initiative to change the way optometrists in the U.S. treat children with myopia. The purpose of the Myopia Collective is to rally the profession of optometry and its allies to interrupt the status quo and elevate the new standard of care for children with myopia. Every individual is encouraged to become a member of the collective. By joining, you commit to taking action to help slow the progression of myopia in children. You'll receive updates and information about the collective and its work in the fight against myopia, gain access to educational opportunities and resources offered by the collective, and hear from change agents, the ambassador optometrists selected to serve as advocates for community and policy change that facilitates the mission of the collective. Scan the QR code or click on the link in the show notes to join the collective today. In the past, our focus revolved around prescribing MacuHealth or MacuHealth Plus to patients at risk of macular degeneration, while also recommending it to collegiate and professional athletes for enhanced contrast sensitivity in sports performance. However, this year's introduction of the Life Meter has been a game changer. The Life Meter revealed a concerning truth. Many of my patients have alarmingly low skin carotenoid levels, indicating potential deficiencies in essential body tissues like the retina and brain. Supported by over 30 peer-reviewed publications, Life Meter's accuracy, consistency, and effectiveness has been demonstrated across 2,000 subjects with diverse backgrounds. With this newfound insight, I can now have meaningful conversations about carotenoid levels with all of my patients, even those who may seem outwardly healthy. To learn more about this empowering technology, feel free to contact your MacuHealth representative or click on the link in the show notes. Together, let's optimize patient care and elevate their well-being. Well, now you just made up my problem because I'm never going to love it. It's funny. You made me think our contact lens strategy in the office. I went back and looked, and I promise this will come back to the 80%. About 7 years ago, I think I counted 16 different fee schedules for contact lens evaluations. Were you a new sphere, a new toric, a new multifocal, or monovision? Were you an established? Right? Am I changing? Right. And the fee schedules were all over the place. And so I joked that when somebody called our office to ask about contact lens, we started talking about adult diapers, because the first thing we said was, well, it depends, right? Depends on this, depends on that. And and so I quickly whittled down to 2 fees. And now we have 1, but we went down to 2 fees, and I'm not talking sclerals or keratoconic or specialty, right? Just your everyday soft lens or even GPs, and so now we could give them an answer, and it was simple. And one of my associate docs was really upset, and they said, "Well, I spend so much more time on a multifocal toric to get it just right." And I said, "You're right, but you spend so much less time on every spherical lens because it just works, right? They all just work. And unless somebody's got a nutty cornea, right, a post-surgical cornea or something, which you should be putting them in a scleral anyway, right? They just work. And so, if you're looking at time, you've made up so much more value by being efficient on one side that you have the opportunity and the time built up now to, if you're doing it right, to spend with the one that needs a little bit more hand-holding. So I think that your point on going back to the 20% that don't fit the rule, right? Let's be really efficient on that 80%. And so then when we're not wasting their time, right? We're just get in and out. We can get what we need, not cutting corners, but just do it right, but efficiently, so that we can slow down when we need to on those unique cases that don't fit the models.
Yeah, it translates perfectly, doesn't it, right? Same as if you were building technology, you just focused on that 80% of use cases, you can run a pretty well-oiled machine in your practice.
Yeah. Well, and I think 80% of our patients, for the most part, I mean, they'll have some medical issues, but dry is not overly complicated most of the time. Allergies aren't overly even glaucoma, right? Some primary open angle glaucoma, as long as you're monitoring it, those are all really quick, efficient, you're in and out type of visits. Again, not cutting corners, but when everything still looks good and they're being managed properly, it shouldn't take a significant amount of time to dedicate to them.
Yeah, and let's go back to the topic that you want to bring up. What does the future of eye care look like?
Yep.
I believe there will be a time in the near future where the standard of care will be data-driven in a way that's not just around studies, but real data. in real time around the data that we capture in an exam, that being fed into somewhere, right? It could be a
Mm-hmm.
server, it could be a cloud, it could be whatever, where analytics in real time is happening, spitting back insights on how you should care for that patient based on, outcomes and what has been happening. And this patient put on this drops, followed up this frequently, is ends up with the best results. And that's, of course, we have studies that we all make data-driven decisions in our practice today. But I wonder, with the world changing, the therapeutic options changing, all these different things that enter the market, our treatment plans may change. The way we care for patients may change. With advancements and everything else, we would love to have real-time data spitting back information and insights for us to modify the way we care for these patients because everything else has advanced. So we should too.
You just got my brain going. What I would love to be able to do, and you're telling me it's going to happen soon, hopefully, is to look at a mom of a 8-year-old patient and not have to say, hey, the MySight study shows X, Y, and Z. Right? And I do studies, and studies are important, but I know how studies work, right? And you have to have tons of controls to do a proper study. But if I've got a large database of, hey, in my hands, an 8-year-old like your son, right, who's a minus 75, who's got this axial length, who is compliant with their MySight lenses 80% of the time based upon the feedback they're sharing, they get this result.
Yeah.
And so now you're not having to trust just me in this sales pitch marketing that I'm trying to spew on you, but I can go back and say, hey, in my hands, this is what works best. And they say, well, what about atropine? Because my friend's kid is on it. So, well, atropine works great, but in our office with our patients, I went this route because this is what we're seeing overall. Now, if your kid was 4 years younger or this, right, maybe I would change it. So I would love to be able to not have them just trust me at my word. And maybe that sounds really bad to say, but to be able to say, look, here's what we're seeing. And I'm going to ask you along this journey with us to, share feedback, whether it's via app or the check-ins appropriately, so that we can know that if you deviate from that, and maybe you say, hey, my kid's only going to wear it 50% of the time. Well, in that case, we're going to either get this response or we need to add a different therapy type modality.
Yeah, and now think about the power of numbers too. So that's in your practice. Here are the results we see, and how many times do you do this even today without any special technology? You go, I like to give you a data-driven answer to your question, right?
Yep.
I look at studies, and what the studies show me is this is what we should do in terms of care for you and the condition you have presented in my office with. Now you have one practice, your practice. Now you have 5 practices, 10 practices, 50 practices. The more data you feed this thing, the more accurate it'll become, the smarter it'll become, the more insightful it'll become, and the better you could take care of that patient. Because now you're saying, hey, in my practice, this is what we see. In the practices, within 10 miles radius from me, this is actually what all these practices see. That right there is a beautiful way to take care of patients. But what's the rate limiting step, or what's the problem?
The data.
The data. We don't like sharing that data.
No.
We want to own that data. We do nothing with that data, but we want to own it. And honestly, but don't we already send it out? We just don't know it. Like those ICD-10 codes that are sent out for claims with the CPTs associated with it, and the contact lens prescriptions that are taken elsewhere, the glasses prescriptions, and some of it's important, some of it's not so important, but oh my gosh, it's our data. And I don't want to share this data, even though I do nothing with this data. So I'm waiting for the heroes of our industry to do something with this data so then it can actually impact how we practice. That is going to be a beautiful story.
That is going to be beautiful. On a small example of that, I'll share a little bit. And I got to be careful how I phrase all this or just say it right. I was noticing in my office earlier this year that our capture rate was dropping. And I don't look at capture rate as optical capture rate, selling a pair of glasses,
Mm-hmm.
from a financial aspect. I've done a really good job of working with our team to make sure that everything we sell is, one, good for the patient, and two, good for the practice, right? So it's silly to sell something and lose money on it. And so I streamline the process so everything we sell is good. I go to In-N-Out, no matter if I choose the 1, 2, or 3 meal, they're going to make some money and I'm going to be happy because it was a good meal, right? But I realized that our capture rate was dropping, and capture rate to me says, was I able to help patients where they wanted to be helped in my office? Or did they have to leave to go elsewhere because there was something that they wanted that I wasn't providing? Oh, look, I got a little thumbs up. That's cute. I don't know how that worked. You and your AI technology. But for those who are listening, somehow I did a gesture and there was a little thumbs up bubble that popped up on the screen. But anyway, I noticed that our capture rate was dropping. And I went and looked, and ultimately what I realized was that we had done a really good job of selling premium lenses and lens designs. And we were doing a really good job of selling the save the sale lens designs when somebody came in and said, I want to leave. Where we were doing a terrible job was in the middle. So I was selling Ferraris, or I was selling a really good used car lot, but I just wasn't selling a Honda Accord or a Toyota Corolla, right? Just what people sometimes just need.
Amazing.
And so I went back and talked to my lab rep, and they go, oh yeah, you guys are over indexed, you're leading the pack. And I said, but I'm also losing the pack, right? Where I'm going with this is it would be really neat to have been able to see that earlier on and to understand the mix and to adjust, because I also don't want to only sell Toyota Corollas because I'm depriving somebody of a Ferrari. I want to be able to make sure they have all the different options, and that I'm staying on top of the new lens design technology because it's pretty darn cool, some of the stuff they're coming out with.
Absolutely.
But not everybody needs it, not everybody can afford it, not everybody wants it. But to be able to say, hey, here's where you need to adjust slightly, here's where you need to pivot and move, because ultimately the patients were suffering. They had to go elsewhere.
Yeah.
Right? And I genuinely don't think they want to leave us. If they do, it's because we missed somewhere on their experience and kind of pushed them elsewhere.
I absolutely agree with that. But you nailed it. It's real-time insights, so you can make real-time adjustments. Mm-hmm. It's this idea of intense behavior and action. One thing that this technology will allow us to do is change behavior in real time and change action in real time. So you as a business owner, you just gave an example of, I'm the CEO of my business, and I was able to change behavior and actionize on that behavior for my business. It's the same thing with the patient. The patient's trying to make a decision that's best for them. How do you change their intention, change their behavior, and ultimately change their action? And if you could do it with data, that's even better and stronger than you try to sell them something. And I think that's what the future holds. I mean, real-time information at our fingertips that allows us to make better decisions as a business owner, better decisions as a clinician. And you could talk about all the different examples. Oh, there's AI-powered medical devices. There's AI-powered software that can help read an OCT for me. Call it OCT for dummies. This is out there, guys. Yeah. It's out there. You don't have to be an expert on reading all the different OCTs. And it's OCT agnostic. So all these things are out there, and it allows us to be better clinicians and make real-time decisions that's best for our patients.
I love that you said real-time. I've always struggled with the probably all professions, but this is the one I'm in. So this one, because we've always felt like we're reactionary. We react to the forces that happen to us, right? And I don't want to use the word victim, but it feels like we're cruising along and everything's good, and then LASIK shows up, and oh my goodness, this guy's going to fall, right? Or managed vision care becomes more abundant, and the sky's falling. Or some really smart kids out of Harvard, I think they're from Harvard, open a Warby Parker because they see how much money is in our industry, and instead of saying, wow, that's validating that we're in a field where we can help a lot of people, we say, oh my gosh, something bad is happening to me, right? And even with disease management, I still remember this lady. She's passed away now, sweet old lady. But I saw her macular degeneration early with the drusen, but I wasn't aggressive enough with her to do something about it. And the last couple of years of her life, she converted to wet, was having injections, and to this day, I still regret not pushing hard enough because, again, I think we're reactionary instead of, I would love to be in the moment, but even better to be more proactive to say, hey, here's what I see coming. We need to make changes now because if not, this is what's going to happen. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes perfect sense. And actually, the concept that it reminds me of are lead measures versus lag measures. Lead measures allows you to look at something before the action takes place so you can modify that behavior right away, whereas lag measures are really transactional data, right? You were looking at lag measures when you saw that our conversion rate in our optical wasn't as good as it needed to be. Then you looked at the data, analyzed it, and the insights gave you the reasoning, so then you made changes.
Yep.
The future of technology allows us to get more lead measures so we can change all those things in real time, and then it modifies the behavior before that transaction's made. And this is a problem not just in our industry. This is a problem with big box retailers. Big box retailers really want these lead measures too, and they want to impact behavior, intention, behavior, action for their consumers. And then the other thing you talked about, you brought up Warby Parker. You brought up other, some people call them disruptors. It's also a word that's used a lot. But somebody who brings a slightly unique business model with different value propositions and with a specific target audience, and comes in and says, watch, this will work. And it works. And one thing that we always do is we talk about our patients as patients, and we forget our patients are also consumers.
I've been trying to call them customers a lot more. I've been gotten a lot of negative comments because of that, but I believe they're consuming healthcare. And what I like about that is it also puts the burden on me to sell them whatever it is that I'm trying to, right? It reminds me that I'm not a deity, right? I'm not I don't speak and people have to listen, right? I've got to have a conversation with people. I've got to have a relationship to help them understand, to take their glaucoma medicines, to take their MacuHealth, that I want them to buy new glasses, whatever the case may be.
Well, 99% of people we see are also consumers of Amazon, right? And we talk about Amazonian consumerism. Well, what made it so special? Convenience. Do we really have the most convenient processes for our businesses? I don't think so. I think there's a lot of room for growth and a lot of opportunity for us to be more convenient for our patients. And whether we like it or not, they're used to it when it comes to products that they get from a lot of different places. Now even services. Patients don't have the patience to deal with, to deal with things taking forever. When they have seen in other business models, it doesn't take as long. So we need to step up our game.
Well, it shouldn't take as long, right? It's the shift in the blend between, and I do complain about it, but the merger of professional and personal life, the amount of patients and staff that want to have conversations with me over, Facebook Messenger or Instagram. I don't do the tiki-talkie, but I'm sure they would try to find me there if I did. Right, but there's a blend between the two, to where work from home. So now I can go to work frequently, or I can work while I'm at my kid's soccer practice, or I can go do medical visits during the day because I don't have a typical 9 to 5. It all just kind of meshes. But I think that time is a commodity that we didn't value as much before, but is significantly more important, sometimes even more important than the dollars that go along with it.
Yeah,
if you can increase the time efficiencies, they'll pay the dollars for that.
Yeah, but you talked about this example earlier. When you were talking about all the different contact lens fitting fees you had.
Yeah.
And you actually talked about this piece that we don't look at time, even as a business owner, the right way, right? No. If you think about all the time that's saved there's dollars associated with those savings, right? Someone's getting paid an hourly rate to do a certain
Yeah.
job. We can do it faster. We're actually more operationally efficient, more operationally excellent in how we run our business. And I think that that's an opportunity for a lot of us too.
Yep. So let me ask you this: as we're kind of getting, we've got a few minutes left, but everybody's knocking at my door right now with an AI tool, right? I've got AIs that can make outbound calls. I've got AIs that can read stuff. I've got Chat GPT subscriptions that I can get into, right? Lots of AI tools. How do I know and how do I evaluate as somebody who's not tech savvy which tools are going to add value and which ones are worth investing in or which ones are not? So I know on a clinical device how to try to look and measure the ROI and whether I want to engage in something and if it's going to if it's really helping me solve a problem or if it's just a cool tool that now I got to find a problem for it to solve. So how do I evaluate the different technologies that are all branded as AI coming my way?
Yeah, well, I think you kind of answered the question because every business has different problems. So depending on the problems that you have in your business and where you find the most inefficiencies in your business, look for AI tools there first. If you have a demographic that just loves to pick up the phone and call you, you probably can benefit from these chat bots, if you will, that allows you to handle and triage some of the inbounded calls. That more than another business. If you do a lot of medical eye care services, you could probably benefit from these tools that help you make a diagnosis. And they may not diagnose, but they'll help you make a diagnosis faster and be more efficient, especially if you're a heavy medical practice. If you start to look at all the tools for what they are, I think there are a couple questions you should ask yourselves. You should ask yourself, first of all, what problem do I need to solve? One, we talked about that. The other one is, when we look at these tools, we should see if there's any risk to our business too, because I think a lot of tools today, the AI is connected to the internet, right? So a lot of these things, I'm not sure how HIPAA compliant all these tools are. So there are some questions that need to be asked from that standpoint. Now, what's great is the future state of AI, and it's happening now more than ever. There are local AI models, meaning it's disconnected from the internet, locally stored somewhere. So the model can do its magic, if you will do its magic in a black box not connected to the internet, and that will allow us to have more healthcare AI tools in the near future.
That'd be cool.
And with the increased competition that's we're seeing within the space of AI, it'll bring costs down. And I think that's another thing is there are a lot of AI tools, and then there's costs associated with it, but we haven't figured out. Okay, we paid for this. How do we monetize it? Is there a way where we can say, all right, okay, this has made me more efficient, so it's worth the money I spend on it? Or we have to ask, what else how else do I look at this from a business standpoint every time I bring these tools in? Because before you know it, you're using 5 or 6 tools and you're paying $1,500 a month, and you don't know where you actually benefited.
That makes a lot of sense. I was talking with a good friend of mine, 2 of them actually, Chris Wolf and Kyle Clutie. One of the measures that KPIs that I love the most is revenue per doctor hour, per doctor clinical hour. Mostly because of the hour part, right? If you manipulate the bottom number on the time, it has a huge effect on the overall formula. Like my Optos, for example, is very clear on the ROI. I can charge $39 for a screening. I see 10 people a day. I made $390 a day, right? Whatever the math gets you. An automated refracting system was a little bit more challenging to understand and implement because you could say, well, you're so much faster, so you should be able to see another patient a day, but if I don't make the changes and I'm still booking every 30 minutes, that potential return was never realized. So I guess the question I'm asking is what have you seen for offices or practices or businesses that have looked to use the AI technology to be more efficient, put it into play so they truly are more efficient?
Yeah, well, there aren't a lot of tools yet that I would say our colleagues actually adopted. There are tools that are coming out, and people are starting to use it. The adoption is starting to increase. So I don't know if I can answer your question with confidence, but I can tell you that there are certain things that are almost obvious, right? Like AI scribes in your electronic health record system. If you don't have to spend as much time charting, 100% this has benefited you one way or another, especially as you're still there and the patient's still there and you're getting
Yep.
more face time. There's value in that. Some of it's tangible, some of it's intangible. That's fine. We can agree on that.
Yep.
But if you have staff that are constantly picking up phone calls, but then there's patients in the office that they can be helping,
Yep.
that's 100% added value to your business. And so there's a lot of these things that we're starting to see. I don't think I have enough even empirical data to say, oh, I see it's improved, this part of the business or that part of the business. I'm keeping an eye on it. I can't wait to learn more. I'm learning
Yep.
every day. But I think it'll be very interesting to see as these things get adopted, what does the data show you? Like, where is the real value? And it's not always what you think it is. Like you talked about this, it's not always being able to see one more patient a day, or whatever the value proposition is there.
Yeah. Well, that would be really super interesting if there was a way to better track compliance on medical recommendations, right? Are my glaucoma patients more compliant because I get to spend more face time with them? Are we, same with AMD patients, diabetic patients, right? The ones that are, at least for me, the single most challenging people to work with because they've heard it all, but my Diet Coke and McDonald's still tastes really good. Is there a way to help improve quality of the care that we're giving, not just the words that we're spewing, but the actual care that is being realized because we get more face time and whatnot?
That's a really good point. I hope we can measure this at some point so we can take a look at the results and make data-driven decisions on the results, based on the results.
Well, that's all we want ultimately, right? I just want people I want healthier people. I want to improve the quality of more lives, and in the services that we give. Well, Masoud, I think we went on a couple of different places. I don't know if we hit everything that we had talked about on the pre-chat, and I always look forward to chatting with you. So if you're up for it, I would love to have you back to continue the discussion, because I still feel like we're in the infancy on a lot of the things here. And unlike other technologies, this one feels like we're hitting the ground running more so out of the gate, right? It's not a crawl, walk, run, just kind of run. And would love your help in navigating all of it.
Well, I appreciate you having me. I've said this before in my lectures too, is AI is the greatest accelerator we have yet seen. So it allows us to really progress very quickly. And it's only going to get better from here. We're only in the early stages of it.
So awesome. Well, until next time, appreciate it. Those listening, would love to hear your comments. Good, bad, or otherwise, right? Feel free to yell at Masoud and I talking about whether we're going to be doing refractions or not anymore, or any other comments in the show notes, or feel free to reach out to me directly. Would love to hear your thoughts, because we're all on this journey together. Awesome.